Hi everyone, this is Tarmac, and I wanted to add a quick disclaimer to this video. These devlogs are recorded throughout the year and not always what would be considered current news. The reason we're releasing this now is because we have a very different, much more positive devlog to follow tomorrow, something you may already know if you follow @Herring Studios on Twitter. Isaac and I recorded this back in July 2021, very shortly after receiving some bad news on the project. You don't get this kind of behind-the-curtain reaction from developers very often, so I hope this is helpful or enjoyable or both. We had some bad news that happened very recently here about funding. So to start off with, I mean, we had applied for Canada Media Fund, the Conceptualization grant, and they had given us $15,000 for that. And then we had gone on to apply for the prototyping, which is the next stage. They've got sort of a tiered thing. You go from conceptualization to prototyping, and then into production. And I'll let Isaac take it away.
Yeah. So we talked over the course of the last few devlogs that like Chris said, we applied for the Canada Media Fund's funding program, which basically incubates game development businesses and takes them through the funding streams, conceptualization first. After completing the conceptualization stage, we are eligible to apply for prototyping. The timelines lined up very well, right? We intentionally planned the conceptualization stage to finish in time that we could take those resources and use them to reinforce our prototyping application. We hired external consultants to assist us with the prototyping application. It was a very involved process. Probably took me about 50 hours of copywriting, proposal writing. I know Chris did a market analysis. We had to put together everybody's CVs that was involved in the project, bank statements, financial statements for the company. Right, proposals, what are you going to use this money for, right? Think about if you were giving somebody $250,000, how much information would you want to know about what they were going to spend that money on?
All of the information, right? You're going to want to know every damn thing about them.
Yeah, and so this is a government agency that is set up for the purpose of funding, Canadian-based media programs, including film, television, and video games. And so, right, government agency subject to audit, not unlike a public company. And so their process of here are the documents you need to submit, here's the order you need to submit them in, here's the maximum number of pages that everything can be, here's your maximum character counts, like you name it. It's a very rigid application process, and it's also very competitive. Right, these aren't small dollars now that we're into this, larger stage. Like this is a $250,000 Canadian prototyping application, and so across the industry, there's tens of millions of dollars on the line for studios like us that are in various stages of development, be it conceptualization, prototyping, production, and marketing and commercialization. So we did the work, right? Over the last year, we completed the conceptualization application, completed the conceptualization, took all those materials, worked with the consultants, put forward our best application, waited 2 months, and yesterday we heard that we didn't get it. So it's tough, right? It's you can do everything right. You can make all the right moves and still lose, right? I read that. I think that's an old Star Trek: The Next Generation quote that I read online the other day, and it just popped into my head that we did the conceptualization on purpose because we knew that we were a brand new studio, and although some of our members are very experienced in the industry, we were untested as a group. And so, right, the conceptualization phase is optional. You can go straight to the prototyping phase if you want. We chose to complete conceptualization first, to put ourselves through the process, right? To put us through our paces, to show that we could do this. And so to submit the application, and right, we know it's competitive. We don't know who we're up against. And so you don't know what good enough is, right? You put 50 hours of your time into it, you hire consultants, you know, and that's not including all the time we put into producing the conceptualization, the proof of concept, which we use the material of, right? We submitted that proof of concept demo. We submitted the trailer that we made. We submitted screenshots. We submitted our art Bible that outlines how the systems and the graphics look in the game and how things are done stylistically. And it was a very arduous process. It took a lot of time and effort from a lot of folks. And so it's really disappointing to be told that you weren't successful. I got my hopes up, right? And I think it was reasonable to do that, right? We were really excited about what we had done, right? We were right on the heels of launching our Steam page, which has been quite successful so far, right? We're building a community and an audience for the game, and it's being very well received by the public. And so although the Canada Media Fund didn't know that when they were evaluating the application, because it wasn't part of the application we submitted, because we've done it since then. We thought that that sort of bolsters your confidence that what you're doing is good and right. And everybody we talked to, other developers in our space who were applying for different phases of funding, you trade applications. Hey, can I see your application? I'll trade you, and we can look at and give notes to each other about what we liked, what we didn't like, and let's evaluate our scores and analysis and trade and that sort of thing. And right, it's a community, and we're all trying to work together to better ourselves as devs. And sure, we compete a little bit, but I don't compete with somebody who's in the production space. Yeah. And they don't compete with me because we're in prototyping. So there's value to be had in learning from each other. And we hired professional consultants, and they said, you have and they were helping multiple companies, and they have built their careers and their businesses out of taking companies through this process. And so when they tell you have a very good chance, we took them at their word. I assumed, because we've been successful at everything we've done so far, that was going to continue, that we were going to be successful. It was just a matter of put the effort in, do the right things, keep doing the right things. That old saying, luck isn't luck. Luck is when hard work meets opportunity. I felt like we were in that space, right? We were doing all the right things. We were working hard. We weren't the most qualified people on the block, but the proof's in the pudding, right? The demo itself was excellent. All the materials are excellent. So after all that, to hear that you're not successful, and although we have alternatives, it certainly would have been the easiest, right? It's the largest funding source for our current stage of development, and getting it would have opened some other doors that, although they're not closed to us now, are going to be more difficult to knock down, right? So there are other funding organizations, right? We can go after things like Edmonton Screen Industries Office is a local media grant organization or support organization here in town that we can talk to. We can still go talk to publishers, and we plan to do both of those things. But both of those channels would have been easier if we could have said, we have $250,000 from Canada Media Fund, so we only need X from you. Right? Edmonton Screen Industries Office even has a grant channel for underwriting the 25% that you need to put up for CMF. So if you got accepted by CMF, there's this grant program we have where we provide you the 25% that you're required to have for CMF. But it's sort of, if you get accepted. If you don't, you can't access that funding. Right? Publishers, that's a business. They have limited, right? They have risk profiles and limitations to how much risk and how much they're willing to invest in projects. And so being able to go to them and say, publisher, I need $250,000 less than I would have needed from you because I got Canada Media Fund funding, would have been helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Although I've said before, and I maintain, right, all of us have day jobs, and this is a part-time endeavor that we're hoping to turn into a full-time endeavor. This money wasn't the difference between us eating or not. And so we're lucky in that respect. But at the same time, I'm disappointed and feel responsible that the team can't continue in the same way that we had wanted, right? I can't, right? So today would have been me telling the team that we got accepted and we could go and, right? This plan that we spent months working on to submit as part of our application, we can start doing this now. Mm-hmm. So, hey, Andre, let's get going. Hey, Tarek, let's get going. Like, it would have been so exciting. And now it's just such a punch in the gut. And so, yes, we can do other things. Yes, we will continue. This doesn't take away anything from our successes, right? The Steam page is still doing well. The community is still doing well. The demo is still well received. I do have some personal funds that I can put into the project to continue, but that's more limited, right? I don't have $250,000 sitting around. And so this, although we're going to continue with the project, this may cause a delay to whatever the release date would have been is probably going to be later now. Mm-hmm. Because today would have been me saying, congratulations, everybody, let's get to work. And now it's, sorry, everybody, we can't work to the extent that we were going to. Here's what we can do. Let's keep doing these things. Let's not give up because that's mm-hmm. important, right? We can still apply again. The door is not closed, but it's a timed intake. So twice a year, once every 6 months, they take applications. And so we applied, we weren't accepted. So it took them a few months to tell us that. So really it's not 6 months away, it's more like 3 months away now. So in 3 or 4 months, we need to be ready to apply again. And we will be, and we will, it's funny. They sent out our letters of decision after their offices closed yesterday. So you can't even phone them to ask questions about it. And I'm sure they do that on purpose so that a bunch of pissed off people don't phone them and give them hell, because I wouldn't want to be on the other end of that phone call. I was certainly, I feel like I went through the 7 stages of grief yesterday, right? There was a point where I was angry about it, and I'm not angry about it anymore, but I'm certainly disappointed in myself, if I'm honest. And right, there are parts of it, right? We don't have any control over who we're competing with. So it's not fair to myself to be disappointed, but that's the reality, right? That's how you feel. So, right, there are things we can do. And I phoned our analyst, and I have an appointment tomorrow to talk to her about what comments they made on our application and how we can better our application for the next submission. That's right. That's good feedback again, right? Like it's a process. The door's not closed. We can apply again, just not for 4 months or whatever that looks like. But we'll take the feedback for what it is. There are some, right? You went through the analysis yourself. You know what it says. Yep. There are some concrete actions that we can take to improve, right? Some of the things on the application we can't change, right? Some of the things we can.
Yep.
And so we're going to take a good hard look at the areas where we weren't as successful in the marking as we could have been had we made different decisions. And we're going to do everything we can to close those gaps to improve our next application. And there are good parts of the work that we did for our application that will help us in development. Obviously we had to have, like I say, we had to have a really detailed budget, a really detailed plan of what we were going to do next. We had to put together all of the, copy, the description of the project and the market study and everything else. Other people, other organizations are going to find that stuff helpful, and we can reuse portions of that, right? I'm sure that Edmonton Screen Industries Office has a similar application process, and publishers are going to want to know all that same stuff. So it's not that all that work was for nothing. It just wasn't successful right now. And we have to sort of pivot and retool and, work on some things so that we can be successful in the future. That's just where we are.
Yep. It's always a tricky thing, and you'll find, viewer, because I know Isaac's well aware of this. You'll find that when you're doing anything that matters, you very quickly come up with the path you wish to take, right? When you want to buy a house, you find that perfect house, and that's the one you're after, and then somebody beats you on offers, right? And you don't get to have that house. Or
that happened to me a while ago too. So
yeah, you're just you're just rolling all sevens here.
Yeah.
Or in the case of financing it in particular, because I've been through this with two other very unrelated to video game situations where I've been a part of trying to acquire financing for, a tech project of some kind. And you try that ideal path, and it doesn't always go. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But I think in this particular case, the way that we are looking at it, the way that we have to look at it, is that so much good work has been done up until this point, right? To get the demo to the way it is, where it feels like way more of a game than it actually is, right? That's really how I would try and sell this demo to somebody who understands how they're built. It looks like way more of a game than it is.
We used absolutely all of the development material that we had. We used everything that we made in that demo. When you play the demo, it's great, but that is all we have.
Yeah. There's no cut content. There's none of that. And but the amount of passion and work that went into creating that, you can't throw this away. You can't just take this and say, oh, well, okay, Canadian Media Fund says we're not going to support you this round. And by the way, here's the list of things that we think were good and we think were bad. And I don't know how much we can and can't say about their application process, but a failing mark in this particular case was 76 out of 100, right? Yeah. According to their scoring guidelines. Yep. So that's how close to an invisible line we don't know where it was that we were. And there are some things that we know we can improve on for another application. And of course we're going to. But publishers were always a thing that was on the horizon. And so that's one avenue that is currently being worked towards, at least as of the recording of this video. I know that a pitch deck is currently in production. Yep. And we already have so many of the materials needed for those sorts of things anyways. So it is disappointing to not have, here have 250 grand, go make a thing, right? But it's by no means an end at all. And I want to reiterate the disclaimer at the beginning of this is that we're recording this here in the late middle of July, the day after bad news has arrived. So if you're watching this 3 months, 4 months from now, probably a very different story at that particular juncture. But
I know it's
part of the point of these devlogs was, we don't know how to make a video game, and you, dear viewer, probably don't either. And we figured maybe you'd like to learn from the mistakes that we make along the way and take some advice and whatnot, or at least just enjoy the misery. We committed to being transparent about this process. I'm learning as I go. And I said in my very first devlog that
right, this is something I always wanted to do. And I know that there might be other people out there like me who come from non-traditional career paths and who are trying to make it in game dev, or who are thinking about it and who want to understand and learn more about the industry before they make that leap. And so, right, I'm committed to being as transparent as we can be. From what I've heard, we were very close, right? That the line may have been 79, 80. So very close.
It stings.
Right. That one of the other devs I was talking to that is in another stream, in prior years, he had been accepted for prototype funding at 76. He actually had an application where he got 76 and got funding. Mm-hmm. So it's the competitiveness of the intake is different every single time. And so what may have been successful a few years ago, or as recent as last year or even last intake, in the current conditions with this intake wasn't good enough.
Yep.
It was very close, right? There are definitely some things that we've identified that if we had made some different decisions, we would have likely been accepted. And it's hard, right? It's hard to know that and go, they weren't difficult decisions to make. We just made what, in hindsight, what the CMF believes are non-optimal decisions from their perspective.
And to add on to that, in my experience with government programs, and this may be useful to other developers that are coming along, there is an art to writing grant applications, and to writing pitch decks and all of these things. This is not something, if you write your own publisher pitch deck or you write your own grant application without anybody else even looking at it, you will fail. This is the truth of it. And part of the reason for that is the way that these grant programs develop, they to some extent come up with a bit of an internal language. There are very specific things that they're looking for. And if you don't answer it in exactly the way that they're expecting that answer to come in, sometimes you get marked, docked marks for that. And so this is where, initially, I know when Isaac was talking about, when you were talking about a lot of the consultants, I'm sitting in the back kind of going, do we really need all of these consultants? Because there is a few that you've had along the way. But I didn't say anything because I've been through some of this grant stuff before as well. And I know sometimes it's better if you can get somebody who has written these or writes these professionally. You may save yourself an awful lot of heartache, because we had help and we got close, but it still wasn't quite enough. It is really a tough game. Same thing with big RFPs, request for proposal sorts of things from government and big business and whatnot. There is a real art to writing these applications and winning them. This is now our second application of any real stature. The first was conceptualization. We were successful. Now it's prototyping. We weren't successful, but we're also building up the exact materials that CMF is going to need every single time we do this game or the next game or the game after that. And the truth of the matter is that CMF likes to give money to people that they've given money to before. They really are big on that history, that experience level of, they've done a project and here's that project. And okay, now we can trust this developer, right? So it's bad news, but
right. And you really hit on the crux of it there, that the main reason we lost marks was because we're a new studio and I've never designed a game before. And my name was attached to being the game designer on the application. So if we had hired a more experienced game designer, if we had been a company who had released games, even if, right? So most of the people who are involved in the project outside of me, right? Like I'm building a company, not necessarily just a game. I know the skills I don't have. I'm in HR. I hire people for a living. I build organizations for a living. So I knew what I didn't know, or I knew that I needed help. And so I went out and hired the best people I could in the things that I didn't understand. And I set about learning all the things that I didn't understand as much as I could. And so at the same time, I understand the Canada Media Fund's hesitancy to give, right? If they can choose, right? If I put myself in my recruiter shoes from the HR background, if I can choose somebody who is new at it, but really passionate and eager, and somebody who has more experience, and I didn't, right? There's no face-to-face interview. It's all papers. You give them your 50-page proposal or whatever it is, and your supporting material. That's it. They don't phone you. They don't talk to you. They don't ask you any more questions. If you forgot a piece of paper, you're cooked. If one of your things is too short or too long, you're cooked. It's that rigid. And so, I didn't get a chance to interview. I didn't get a chance to talk to my analyst and answer questions. And, well, Isaac, your application looks really good, but you've never made a game before. You're not a professional game designer. So tell me a little bit about how you plan to work around that, or right, do you even see that as a problem? Mm-hmm. Because honestly, I'm concerned about that looking at your application, right? I would, and they took marks away for that.
Yeah.
If we had put an experienced game designer in that spot, we would likely have funding today. But I didn't get a chance to answer that question because all they go off of is what you give them. And so, right, again, it's competitive. We know we're up against studios who have released games before. Yep. Whether those games were successful or not, whether they were objectively good or not, is irrelevant. It's from an experience criterion, CMF looks at it and goes, this person or this company has successfully commercially released games. Whether they sold one copy or 1 million copies. Sure, they maybe give points to people who sold 1 million copies. I would, right? If it was more commercially successful, I'm going to weight that higher. But they still weight people who, like you said, companies they've done business with before, companies that have successfully completed their programs, companies that have successfully released games get the edge. And so when it's this competitive, new guys lose, right? Right or wrong, quality of application, it's objective. And unfortunately, right, like I say, you don't know who you're going up against and you don't get a chance to interview for it.
Yep.
It's just that application is your interview. So it is what it is.
Yeah. And so we're at the moment, scrambling is not the word that I would use, but just reevaluating, okay, well, what are our next steps? We know we can't reapply until October. So that one's on the back burner and that's fine. But we do have a list of some things that, changes that can be made to bolster that application and make it better. Yeah. I don't know what it will be scored at, but I have a suspicion higher than it originally was. And of course, the pitch deck with publishers is still continuing. We're not really any closer to thinking about Kickstarter or any of those sorts of things. Those are kind of maybe a little bit further on, especially, and actually even more because of the success of where the Steam pages come so far. It may not be necessary. You kind of throw a lot of money at physical merch if you want to do a Kickstarter, and that feels like a waste at the level that we're at, I think.
Yeah, well, right, it'll depend on how much publisher support, alternate funding, and hopefully more Canada Media Fund funding we get down the road, whether or not we need a Kickstarter to finish the project, or whether maybe Kickstarter is a question of making the game, they call it a kick finisher, right? You're going to release the game anyway, do the pre-sale activity on Kickstarter to make the game, 20-25% better, right, add some stretch features, or right, whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it certainly sucks, but and I know you've had a rough day with that, and of course letting everybody know. But like I say, if you're watching this video, this is some time ago, so don't be Don't be treating these devlogs as though they're like a live thing. This happened yesterday, and oh my God, the project's over. Of course, it's not. It's just a speed bump. And if you're getting into game development, you need to be ready for failures. It is not going to be golden boy success all the time. You are going to run into things. You're going to run into brick walls face first. It is bound to happen. And we just hope, honestly, that us rambling about the things, the good things that happened and the bad things that happened, that maybe you learn something and maybe enjoy yourself along the way. I don't know. Any other thoughts, Isaac?
No, I think that's good. That's a good way to end it off. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.